And I can remember talking to Poppy, and Ward was saying, now, someday they're going to fly, you can travel faster than the speed of light. And then Poppy's like, no, you can't travel faster than the speed of light. You're violating the Einsteinian assumptions. Poppy introducing me to Kant, Mom was disappointed that he didn't pay enough attention to her kids. How do you know what's right and wrong? Poppy was kind of a philosopher. He was a singer, I'm a singer. And he was a bass singer. I'm a bass singer. He was kind of slow. He was a philosopher. He was talking about social philosophy kind of thing. Lee, smoking party girl, very nice, gregarious, but football nut, sports nut is incredible. Apparently they golfed all the time, and that's and she liked singing too. Her mom introduced them, and she really blossomed to be a grandmother during that time. We called her Aunt Lee. She was Graham Lee, particularly peanless. Martin was always slow and deliberate, but he seemed always genuine in his heart. Martin, watch football, watch sports. That was it. Or he'd talk about the stock market. He loved talking about the stock market. But here's Ward, kind of gregarious, friendly, beer drinking, likes to have good times, likes to eat, and has interests outside of work. And I thought, oh, isn't this nice? Isn't this cool? Remember going to Shirley's and their 25th wedding anniversary. He drove me there, and I felt special. Drove from Pittsburgh, picked me up in Cleveland, and went up to Milwaukee for this. Oh, it was Shirley's parents. Maybe it was their 50th or wedding anniversary, and it was in the basement of their Lutheran church. It was just very down home. People just brought, a hot dish, and it was on a Saturday night, and we had polkas. And I think there was a band there. We slightly overweight, very assertive, and would just talk and talk and talk non-stop, and she knew it was non-stop, and she used to say, now honey, I know I've been talking to you too long now, and you hang up that phone, you just rub your ear, and now, that'll cure it. One of my favorite expressions of Aunt Nancy was, well, that guy doesn't have enough sense to pound sand down a rat hole. Well, her plantation in New Hampshire was very nice. She'd love to make us either pecan or blueberry pancakes. I can't remember which one. Sometimes I remember we would take the lift up and just kind of walk back down. I think we took a dip in one of these lakes up there, and we were in our underwear, so we had our underwear drying on our heads, and we were running down the trail. I remember us passing this troop of Boy Scouts, very, very disciplined Boy Scouts in their formation, and we're like barreling down the trail. We weren't naked. We had our clothes on. Towards the end of her house and her apartment in New York was just so sad to see. The New York Times just piled up piles and piles of yellow New York Times that she never got around to reading, and she'd always like to get Chinese food. Nancy was born with this frown on her face, but you could tell when she smiled, she had a smile, but she always had this skull. It's just part of her nature, but yet I don't think she was really frowning. It was just there. This silly nursery rhyme she used to sing with, and then Yetta would sing with her. What do you do with the lumps of coal ice? Asked the railroad train. Do you swallow all those big lumps whole, or do they cause you pain? The train said, no, I chew. I chew, 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 chew. As simply as I'm telling you, the train said choo, 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 which is pretty corny, but she loved it. Grana, Hallie Ward Olander, we were afraid of her, all of us. We were really afraid of her as kids, because she was so forceful. So forceful, like she was forcing Herb through school, like driving him. And I can imagine that, because Herb just, to me, seems so laid back, and Grana would just, I can imagine her just kind of pushing him through to his graduate program or his master's or whatever he got to go, teach teachers. Just maybe bossing around people. I remember her talking about summer canoe rides, picnics and evening canoe rides. She wanted horses. Oh gosh. I mean, Mom would tell me stories when they were in Johnstown and they renovated this old mansion that had a carriage house and had old horses, and she worked her tail off renovating it. And this was during the Depression time. I actually had a pony, and Mom would ride a pony. So Mom was like blue blood amongst the neighborhood, that she had a pony she would ride to school, or a pony would follow her to school in Johnstown. Her Christmas cards were always hilarious. It was an original Christmas card. She'd think up some theme and write it out, design it, and there'd always be a little poem. And they were kind of corny rhyming phrases, but are cute, original. And she did it every year. She was not a good cook, she really was. She would make this one dish called, it was wilted lettuce salad with bacon in it. This salad was really wilted. I mean, she would fry up this wilted lettuce, and she'd make us eat it. We had to eat it, so it was. This was in Deerfield Beach, and I think she taught me skills, how to iron your shirt. I slipped and fell on a wet stone, and I got a cut on my cheek. Ward criticized her for going to a cheap doctor, and Ward said, "Oh, there'll be a scar there for Brady's life." And I used to go visit her friends. She had an old gentleman caller, and I called him George Washington, because to me he looked like George Washington. That was the joke. Oh, we're going to go see George Washington, her kind of boyfriend, in quotes. Frank was very nice to her. I don't really remember how they met. He was a tailor, and traveling with Grana. Grana would always be commenting on all the scenery. She'd say, "Oh, look at that tree. Oh, look at that building. Oh, look at that house. Oh, look at that." And Frank would say, "Isn't this marvelous that my wife Hallie can tell me, what's going on while I'm driving in the car?" And she had some very interesting stories about running into an Indian, a native, American Indian, a very poor man, and he would come by the house and be begging for food, and feeding a poor, hungry, begging Indian, on her back door. Actually, for her time, maybe, she was ahead of her time when I think of it, that she was maybe a little bit of a woman's liber. Democracy in the classroom. She used to talk about when she teach, she tried to get the students to run the classroom themselves. She could do anything. I remember her saying, reading a story about someone drowning in a swimming pool. And she said, "Those little pools are so small. If I saw myself drowning in one of those pools, I'd drink myself out." Grana and Aunt Nancy going out west had like a 1930s, or maybe it was a Model A. She brought with them a gun for protection back then, and they gave the gun a name, and I think she never used it. They kept it in the glove box, kept the gun in the glove box just in case, they needed it. In the springtime, tarring her own roof. And this was after Frank died, and she died just 6 months after Frank died, just like the statistics show, that they had her in a bed in Ward's room. It's still called Grana's room on the second floor, and moved her to Southwest, and she died just a few days after she came to 3, I think. much of a funeral, was it? I mean, all we did was go to Ward's farm up near Oil City. You know, we planted a tree there on Ward's property. Kai was into fireworks at the time, fire rockets. So he put her ashes in some fire rockets and blew them up. Grandma Crane couldn't speak any English. But she was always nice. Come on, kids, we'll give you some candy. And she'd always be nice and smiling. And I remember her funeral, I was the only guy that made it. And she died, Grandma Crane died, and I went to the funeral, and I was the only McCosco that made it there. And I slept in her bed. I went to her funeral and slept in her bed up there in the candy store. I needed a place to stay, and it was available because all the other people that went to the funeral were from the Pittsburgh area, is what I understood, that there wasn't anyone that had driven like myself. I'm sure Uncle Mike was there, this guy that grinded telescope lenses in McKeesport. And Dad liked him a lot. But maybe this was Andy rather than Mike. But yeah, it's one of Dad's uncles. And Dad had a lot of aunts, and of course his favorite was Aunt Mary. And she was very nice. I mean, that was when we were kids, the thing we loved was, you know, we'd visit the Olanders, but we always wanted to make sure we made it to the candy store before we went home. It was like we'd see her. She had a great smile, kind of a nervous smile, but a nice smile.